follow-ups, we'll do that. Let's start it off. Lead-off hitter for us today is going to be Clay Hall. Clay, go ahead.
Hey, Ryan, great tweet last night, by the way. I know you're probably thinking only about football. It feels like name, image, and likeness is on the horizon. There's a big Supreme Court case that's going to impact that. Have you given that any thought, how you guys will handle it or who will handle it for you? Or do you feel like it's still a ways away?
We've had very, a lot of talk about it. And I think there's uncertainty right now of where in the spectrum of where this thing lands, that's hard a little bit to plan too much going forward. There's kind of a wide open thing, and then there's some restrictive things, and there's somewhere in between. So until that works itself out, we're kind of in a holding pattern, other than, we're really, putting things in motion to make sure that, we're ready to roll. We're ready to help our guys in this space, because certainly Ohio State, with the amount of exposure that these guys get and the amount of interactions we get on social media, there's going to be unbelievable opportunity for these guys in that area. So, we're going to kind of wait and see when the ruling's made, and then we'll start to implement, our support for these guys. In the end, we can't provide anything for them other than support and education. But certainly there's going to be a lot of opportunity for them.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we'll go next to Nathan Baird from Cleveland.com.
Hey, Ryan, can you kind of assess where Cade Stover is 1 year after this change he's made to tight end, and how close he might be to having a real role in the offense?
Yeah, he worked really hard this past year, but he's like a lot of these guys that didn't have a spring last spring, didn't have much of a preseason, and then played behind Luke and Ruck last year, so didn't have a lot of game experience. But this is a big spring for him. This is the time. I mean, he's got to really step up now. I think he's poised to do that. He's had a good off season. So now, we'll see how the spring goes, but we're excited about what we see.
All righty. Next up, Rob Aller, Columbus Dispatch.
Oh, Rob, can't hear you, man. No.
All right, Rob, we'll come back to you. Let's go to Tim May. Tim?
Just joking. I was just moving my lips. Hey, Ryan, last week, Taraja Mitchell admitted that he dealt with some performance anxiety problems or, challenges in the past and stuff. And basically, it wasn't just that he admitted that and felt like he admitted it, but he also was able to get, help from that, help for that. And I'm just wondering, how much does that show you how far you guys have come along as a program and maybe as a sport? And I know you've pushed for those kind of issues, that a guy not only can admit it, but can get treatment for it right there within the program.
Yeah, Tim, thanks for bringing that up. I think it's really strong statement by him to talk about that. It shows his security and who he is as a person. And I think that's a strong statement, and it goes to show you that a lot of these guys suffer from that. But the fact that he's able to communicate it, ask for help, and we do have an environment here where it's talked about a good amount, that you have physical health and you have mental health. And if you're spending a lot of time on your physical health but not your mental health, you may have an issue. And so we talk about that all the time. We have support here, and it's recommended. And I've talked to the guys before and explained to them that I've spoken to people before. We all need to work on it. Yeah. And for him to not only ask for the help, but then feel confident enough to speak up and explain that he went through that. Hats off to him. And hopefully there's other people out there that hear that and are willing to ask for help.
Thanks, man.
Yep. Thank you.
All righty, Rob, you're up.
Can you hear me this time?
Got you, brother.
All right, great. It's a whole new ball game, Ryan, with quarterbacks. Can you just run us through some of the key differences and challenges between having a new guy that's never thrown a pass in a game and, say, a Justin Fields returning? From your standpoint, how do you handle that? What do you do with these guys?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is there's just not game experience. There's not a lot of practice experience. There's not a lot of snaps. And because of that, it's like when you ride a bike, you don't just jump on a bike and start riding, you fall down some. And so there's going to be growing pains along the way. And you just have to be willing to work through those. Justin had his, Dwayne had his, Joe had his, JT had his. I mean, every quarterback has their things that they work through. What you like is for them to learn through a couple of years in the program. And then by the time they get on the field, they've kind of worked through a lot of those things. Well, today's day and age, we don't have the luxury of doing that. So, these guys are going to kind of, jump with 2 feet in the pool, and they just got to go and learn how to swim quickly. But like we talked about before, they're going to make mistakes, but how quickly can they learn from those mistakes? If we start to see the same mistake twice, then that's going to be an issue. And then how well do they prepare? How well can they solve the issues of the day? And I think that's so much of being a quarterback. And, when you look at the greatest there are in the game, maybe they're not the most talented, but they're certainly the most skilled and disciplined. And that's what these guys are working on now.
You've talked about this before, but is that
to Tony Gerdeman, Buckeye Scoop?
Ryan, going off a little bit of what Rob's talking about, with Kyle McCord, knowing how important those game reps are and you guys not having those, are there fewer roadblocks for him to win this job than in a standard year? And how have you seen him perform so far since he's been at Ohio?
I mean, it's still early, still learning the offense, and we're still installing and all that. But there's no incumbent starter, so the competition's open, and guys are competing every day. And I think the thing for those guys is the other way to look at this thing is you can't win the job in one day. You can't win the job in one throw either. You have to just build over time, and that's important to understand, because I think it's easy when you're young to try to force the action and try to win the job. And that doesn't come that way. It comes over time with just a body of work, and that body of work's being built.
All righty, next up, Bill Rabinowitz, Columbus Dispatch.
All right, about the quarterbacks, has enough time passed that you can give at least kind of semi-first impressions of each of the 3 guys and what they've impressed with and what they need to work on?
Yeah, not really. I think they all share that they're still doing some things for the first time. And we're still on first and second down. We start installing third down on Wednesday. And then we can start getting into move-its and situational things. So they all throw the ball well. The ball comes out of their hand well. They still need to work on consistency in those areas and the different things fundamentally and technique-wise throwing it that makes them more consistent. But they certainly all throw it good enough. Now, decision-making, timing, consistency, vision, anticipation, those are all the things that come into play. And then in the end, who takes care of the ball? The guys who turn the ball over aren't going to last very long as a quarterback at Ohio State. So, those are the things we'll have to figure out. But yeah, when you just watch them go out there and throw the ball on air, they all look the part and they all throw it really well. But now who's going to run the offense and be a leader? Because in the end, that's what quarterback's number one job is, being a leader.
All righty, we'll go next to Whitney Harding, WCMH.
Hey, Ryan, tomorrow is pro day. My question is about Trey and Tommy. They are using this as an opportunity to help others and not just further their careers. What does that say about those 2 guys and your program, that these players are thinking beyond themselves with regards to their platforms?
Yeah, I think that it's something we talk about in recruiting, is the platform that Ohio State provides, and the fact that, they obviously, their values of compassion and giving back and generosity is significant, and enough to the point where they're giving back already. And means a lot to a lot of people, and goes to show you what type of people they are. But that's why we talk about it in recruiting, and we encourage that. You use the platform that Ohio State has provided to you to make a difference, whatever that is. Certainly don't talk about that. That's up to them. And these guys are doing that, which is great, because that's what it's all about.
All righty, let's go next to Patrick Murphy, 247.
Ryan, you've talked in general about the young cornerbacks. I'm curious, specifically Legend Cavazos, where he stands, what he needs to improve on, just kind of your assessment of him now, a year into the program.
Yeah, he flashes. He's done some good things early. Consistency is something that I know that, we're looking for with him, and the coaches on defense talk about, because he does flash and show that he can do it, but he needs to do it all the time and continually, get better in those areas. The good news for all those guys is they're going up against really good competition every day, with Chris and Garrett and Jackson and Jamison Williams and, some of the guys over there. So it's a great challenge for them. But it can't just be, one or two plays. It's got to be consistency. And as you know, when we start playing against some really good players in our league, and we got to bring it every time, and we're going to continually get challenged out there. So cornerback is a unique position. You have to bring it every play, and you have to have a short memory, and so those guys are all competing at it, and they're growing, they're getting better, they're given good days work every day. So as long as they keep stacking those days, they're going to continue to get better.
All righty, next up, Bill Landis from The Athletic.
Hey, Ryan, I wanted to ask about Lathan Ransom. I guess two things. One, what do you recall about the end of his recruitment and some of the uncertainty there with Jeff leaving and some of the challenges that presented? And then two, what did he do last year to get on the field as a true freshman in a season where guys didn't have, as you've said several times, like the normal buildup that you'd like the freshmen to have?
Yeah, I mean, he really came on for us and played well, especially in the semifinal game against Clemson. Really competed. He showed that he could do that in practice. And so because of that, he had an opportunity to do it. It was hard this year, like you said, because we just didn't have a lot of those games where we could throw some of those guys in there and find out. So when he was in the game, he hadn't done a whole bunch leading up to the end of the year. So to see him play like that was very encouraging. And the recruiting part of the process, he never really wavered. He was always strong, and we had the communication that we were going to continue to stay with the same style of defense and how he fit into the defense. And he committed to Ohio State, and he's got a really, really bright future ahead of him. And I'm really excited to see him play this season.
Thanks.
All righty, next up, Brendan Gulick, Buckeyes Now on SI.
Hey, Ryan, sticking with the pro day theme for tomorrow. I'm curious what kinds of things guys that are not participating in the pro day because they're still in your program, what kinds of things they can learn from having that experience on campus, and how, with so many of them, I assume, hoping that they can be in a position someday where they are, trying to showcase themselves in a pro day. Just what tomorrow's experience for their former teammates can be like to maybe help them prepare for that moment.
Yeah, I think the first thing you recognize is that it's going to be here faster than you think, because these guys that you grow up watching in the NFL, they kind of seem like you look up to them and you watch them, and it's like, wow, that seems like miles away. And then some of the teammates that you played with a few months ago are now going to the NFL and going to the draft. So you realize that it's right around the corner, and that you have to have urgency about you, because they're going to be in that same spot here soon, and they're going to have that opportunity. And so, to maximize the day, and I think it brings urgency about them. I think the second thing is you realize, how well these guys, when they leave and they go with some of these people, they really do a great job with their diets, and they come back looking leaner, and you can just see they really look the part. They put a lot of time into their bodies, and so much of it is their diet. So I think when you see that, and you combine that with the urgency, it's a good thing for those guys to see, and they'll be out there watching tomorrow.
All righty, we'll go next to Jeremy Birmingham, Lettermen Row.
Ryan, we're about 13 months into this recruiting dead period, and it finally looks like there's at least a light at the end of the tunnel. And then you start to see now a lot of programs around the country are maybe loopholing their ways into ending it prematurely. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective and the program's perspective, how frustrating is that to know that you guys have waited this long, and then to see sort of rules being skirted? And what's the pressure to try to maintain or keep up in that environment? Because it kind of feels like a wild, wild west right now.
Yeah, it's been hard for the recruits. It's been hard for us. And I know it's been hard for their families. And people are dying to get on campus, and but we're in a dead period right now, and we're always going to do things the right way here, and if there's people out there that aren't, then shame on them, and if recruits want to go to a place like that is going to go bend the rules, if that's what's going on, then more power to them. But that's not how we're going to do it here. We're always going to do things in a first class manner, and be above board with everything. We are dying to get these people on campus and be around them and host them on visits and have meals with them and laugh with them and look them in the eye, and show them our culture. That's the biggest thing is to see our players and see what's here. So that's been hard for all of us. But in the meantime, we're going to take the high road and do things the right way. And I think that our recruits and our families respect that. And hopefully that's what they want to be a part of.
Thanks.
All righty, we'll go next to Doug Lamarice, Cleveland.com.
Ryan, you've been asked about the quarterbacks a lot today, and obviously, guys, you said they all look the part, throwing the ball and that kind of thing. I guess this is a question for every quarterback competition, but what you're talking about with processing and in the moment and leadership, will you be able to get a full handle on that this spring and in the preseason, or is there some part of this competition that you just won't exactly know for sure until the winner plays against Minnesota?
Yeah, and even then you may not know, Doug. The process of all that, and as you guys all know, I mean, it's from when you're a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and all the different stories of the quarterbacks that we've had here. Going back to even before I got here with JT and Cardell, and then it was Joe, and then it was Wayne, and then it was Justin. We have all these different stories of guys developing and learning at different times. And so to answer your question, no, I think the more practices we have, the more times we can put them in game situations, the better feel we'll have. But you never stop learning, and you see some of these guys who maybe go on to play in the NFL, and sometimes it takes 5 years. Sometimes it takes 1 year. Sometimes it takes 2 years. You just don't really know. And so as long as they continue to get better and keep growing, then we're going to keep working with them and try to figure it out. I'd love to sit here and tell you that I think we'll have a great feel for it in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or in the 5th practice of preseason, but I don't think so. I do think the more we're around them, the more we get a feel for it and the more it kind of shakes out. But you're right. I mean, even going to that first game, you'll still be learning and trying to evaluate it all.
Thank you.
All right, let's go next to Austin Ward, Lettermen Row.
Ryan, you've got 4 or 5 maybe potential or projected starters that can't participate in this spring, at least fully. I know that that's not uncommon for spring, but this is really missing 2 in a row for those guys. I know the flip side is that you can get younger guys reps, but is it more of a for you this particular year after what you missed that those guys aren't involved?
Yeah, I mean, it's a shame, but that is also football. And, whether it's an injury or COVID or, I mean, there's just these type of things you have to work through, and everybody has their own journey along the way. And, you try not to dwell on it. Certainly you don't like it. You hate it. Drives you nuts. It keeps you up at night. But we're just going to have to push through it. The good news is there are a lot of guys healthy, a lot of guys practicing, and the effort's been excellent. I think that the focus on fundamentals and techniques has been excellent, because in the end, that's what it's going to come down to is effort, fundamentals, and techniques. That's your foundation that you're building. And then we keep going from there. But yeah, it's a shame for some of these guys who won't be able to do it, but we'll just try to get them healthy as fast as we can and get them into practice in preseason.
All right, let's go next to Dan Hope, 11 Warriors.
Hey, Ryan, if you have NFL coaches, scouts coming up to you tomorrow asking you, why they should draft Justin Fields, what are the biggest things you're going to tell them?
Well, the first thing is I think when you look at the way he competes on the field, that speaks for itself. Not only his ability to throw the ball, but his size, ability to make plays. He's a winner. He's tough, really smart. And, he picks things up really quickly. So, whatever they teach in terms of a scheme, he's going to pick that up very, very quickly. And he's very, very competitive. So when you combine the talent, the size, the arm strength, his competitiveness, his toughness, his intelligence, I mean, it kind of checks all the boxes. And if you were trying to design a quarterback, to me, Justin fits that prototype. Now, hasn't played 4 or 5 years of college football. So the good news is he's got a really, really high ceiling. And, whoever drafts him, if they have, a really good plan for him and continually developing him, then the sky's the limit for Justin Fields. And I don't think anyone can argue that. Whether he's, ready-made to be the number one pick in the draft. That's up to them. I mean, every team has to make their own decision. But I know this, everything you invest in that kid, you're going to get back. And it's just a matter of the fit. But yeah, I mean, when you start to go through all the different traits that he has, to me, he checks all the boxes. And he's a wonderful young man. So I think, someone's gonna take a shot at him here early in the draft, and they're gonna have a franchise quarterback for a long time.
We'll go next to Stephen Means, Cleveland.com.
Ryan, just another question about the quarterback battle. Obviously, part of the benefit that Jack and CJ would have had last year is just being around Justin, whether it's in practice time or just hanging around the Woody or whatnot. How much of that did they lose with the pandemic? Not just necessarily the on the field stuff, but just some of the off the field intangibles that maybe he could have been teaching them over the past years. And how does that impact this battle now?
I think on the field stuff, they got a chance to see it for the most part. It was more of the off the field things when we would split up a little bit in terms of meeting. So they still saw it. They still got a feel for it for the year. They didn't get to see the last spring. They probably didn't get to see a whole bunch, in the off season. They did see map drills last year with Justin was awesome. So they got a good feel for it. I wish there was a couple years in a normal year where they could have been around it more to learn more. But they did at least feel it a little bit this past season.
All right, we got just time for just a couple more. We'll go to Adam Rittenberg, ESPN.
Yeah, Ryan, I'm just wondering, with your recruiting efforts, where do you see that impacting the roster the most as far as areas or groups of guys that you see being able to play right away and make an impact?
You talking about in next year's class?
Yeah, well, just the collective recruiting you've had, maybe this past class and the year before. Where do you see that maybe helping you guys the most here this coming season?
Let's see. I mean, there's 3 receivers who just came in mid-year. Those guys are going to be in the mix. Two young running backs that both look really, really talented. I think those guys have a chance to get on the field for us. I would say certainly the quarterbacks, they're young. And then D-line, we'll see with the D-line. In the secondary, some of those guys are here. Some of those guys are getting here this summer. So it'll be interesting to see who of those guys can get on the field because, like you said, that's a position where, we could use some depth there and use some guys getting on the field. So that'll be fun to watch some of those young guys, certainly in the secondary, competing.
All right, we'll go next to Heather Dinich, ESPN.
Hey, Ryan, what do you hope this fall looks like after going through the year that you did in terms of playing in a pandemic? What can't you wait to get back to normal? What do you really hope this season looks like 1 year after the pandemic?
I hope it looks as normal as possible, staying safe. And I know that the vaccines are now available for all of our players here, this week, and those guys have to sign up on their own to get it. But I know it's available for all of our staff, and so that's exciting. And so, hopefully it can be as normal as possible. I think the most exciting thing, as a coach is that 2 things. One, we're able to continue to work to get better and without having any interruptions and have a normal lead up to the season. And then 2, having, fans back in the stands for our players to get that, response and feedback after a great play and that support when you walk in the stadium, because call it for what it is. That's part of the reason why these guys play. They love it. They love playing in front of fans, and they didn't have that this past year. So I'd say those are probably the 2 areas I'm most excited about.
All right, we're going to go with 3 more. First one is Tom Van Aaron, ESPN.
Hey, Ryan, to go back to the question about the dead period in recruiting, when that dead period is lifted, what do you see recruiting in person looking like for those first few months? Do you plan on testing recruits that visit? Are you going to have smaller visit groups? And then is there anything different that you guys might do to try to get caught up in evaluations? And how are you preparing for that?
Well, we're waiting to see. There's really not much we can do preparation wise other than talk to the recruits and their families about coming to visits if it does open up here in June. I think there's going to be some restrictions on how many people we can have in. You're talking about a year and a half of people who haven't been on campus. That's really 2 classes that haven't been here. So they're going to be coming over the walls. And so we're just going to have to be smart about all of that. But for the 2022 class, we're going to be able to do some official visits here, which is great, get them back on campus. We're going to wait to see what the university says about, testing and that stuff when they come on campus. But there's also some talk about possibly having, whether it's camps or even in-person evaluations here when they get here. So we're waiting to find out and get some direction on what to do. And then at that point, we'll kind of go from here. But it's kind of like hurry up and wait and see what's going to happen here. But we have some contingency plans in place. Certainly talking to the families about getting them here, because I know there's a lot of people that are excited to get on campus and get around the program.
All righty, we'll do 2 more. First one to Joey Kaufman, Columbus Dispatch.
Ryan, have you given any thought to how the expansion of roster sizes this fall will kind of affect teams differently throughout the conference? Like some teams have projected to have 90+ guys on scholarship. More teams will have more returning production and experience versus other teams. Do you have any sense on how that might look, or just kind of shape the season?
Yeah, I mean, there's still restrictions on the travel squad and how many guys can you actually play. So I think there's going to be some teams that will probably have some more 4th and 5th year seniors, and that'll be significant. For us, a lot of those guys, whether you say it's fortunate or not, I don't know. But they leave to go on to the NFL. They typically don't stay around for that 4th and 5th year. The good news is they're good players. The bad news is they're not here for that 4th and 5th year. And certainly the 4th and 5th year guys that are in our program, really they bring the leadership and maturity that you need to make championship runs. And so we try to really foster their leadership, and so the more of those guys we can have around, the better for us. So we certainly want those guys around, and you can't play all of them. NFL rosters are right around 53, and then have a few travel squad guys or practice squad guys, and then for us we're at 85. So getting north of that to 90, I don't think it's going to really make a difference in the end, other than the fact that there's going to be maybe some more 4th and 5th year guys on some rosters and some more veteran leadership, I would think.
All righty, we'll wrap it up today with Steve Hellwagon, 247.
Yeah, Coach, I'm curious about your center position. I know Harry Miller sounds like he's not practicing, and who's repping there? And when you build your offensive line, you have the 2 tackles back and Miller, but are you starting at center and building out from there, or are you looking for the best 5 guys, or what's the rationale? Kind of a 2-part question there.
Yeah, we're looking for the best 5 guys. That's for sure. And whatever that looks like, we'll try to make that work. We've done that in the past. Repping right now at center is Matt Jones, Luke Whippler, and Jacob James. But we can easily, when Harry gets back, he can move into center. We have some other guys taking snaps along the way that can do it as well. So we'll look for the top, like you said, the best 5 guys, and then we'll try to make it work from there. And so far, I got to give Matt credit. He's done a nice job in there. Done a really good job, and hasn't really done a whole bunch of that leading into the season. And then I think Luke's had a pretty good off season. He's gotten stronger, so that's been great. As another guy who really needs a spring. And then I got to give Jacob credit. Jacob really did a great job this off season, growing up and getting stronger. Still a long way to go for a lot of these guys, but steps in the right direction, and that's what spring ball is all about.
Thank you.
All righty, Coach. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it today.
Thanks, guys.